In a state where every vote holds the promise of democratic integrity, North Carolina now finds itself in the throes of an unprecedented legal battle over the certification of an election that was decided by a razor-thin margin. In this investigative report, we examine the unfolding controversy as State Supreme Court Justice Allison Riggs explains how a victory by just 734 votes is now mired in litigation, with legal challenges that could have far-reaching implications for electoral processes across the nation. Justice Riggs, whose role on the North Carolina Supreme Court places her at the heart of these decisions, previously celebrated the confirmation of her election victory after two painstaking recounts left little doubt in her favor. Yet, despite the clear outcome established on Election Day, the aftershocks of post-election litigation have delayed the formal certification of her race. Her opponent, Jefferson Griffin, together with a network of allied figures across various courts, has actively contested the outcome by mounting a challenge against approximately 68,000 ballots cast in the state. The appellate process, which is now under the scrutiny of the highest judicial body in North Carolina, has culminated in a split decision. While the court has affirmed that about 60,000 of the contested ballots should remain intact, it has also determined that a subset of roughly 7,000 ballots, comprising military votes, overseas ballots, and ballots from dependents, requires a cure process before they can be officially counted. This decision not only intensifies the existing legal struggle but also places a heavy burden on a crucial segment of North Carolina's electorate. The cure process presents unique challenges. Under the ruling, those affected have a limited window of 30 days to submit a copy of a photo identification to validate their vote. For many of these voters, especially members of the military deployed overseas or students studying abroad, the logistics of securing and submitting such documentation can be daunting. This additional barrier, imposed nearly 6 months after the election, raises serious concerns about disenfranchisement of voters who, on Election Day, had every reason to believe that their ballots were cast in full compliance with long-standing state law. Under the law enacted in 2011, a measure established unanimously by a Republican legislature to facilitate voting for the children of overseas and military voters, North Carolina had, for 15 years, ensured that eligible votes could be counted without this additional burden. However, the retroactive application of these rules now threatens to invalidate the votes of many who relied on the previously well-understood process. The potential fallout includes a domino effect of challenges that could not only reverse Justice Riggs' certified victory but might also undermine the foundational democratic principle that every eligible vote must count. Justice Riggs has voiced deep concern over the impact of these developments. The prolonged legal wrangling, she notes, has left voters increasingly anxious and disillusioned with the democratic process. As each day passes with the uncertainty surrounding the certification of the election, public confidence in the fairness and efficiency of our electoral system continues to erode. According to Justice Riggs, while the certification of 60,000 ballots is a positive development, the looming fate of the remaining 7,000 ballots, subject either to automatic discounting or the cumbersome cure process, remains a severe threat to electoral integrity. The implications extend far beyond the borders of North Carolina. This case stands as a potential harbinger of a broader strategy, one where partisan operatives may exploit legal loopholes to selectively disenfranchise voters. The pattern is clear. If a political candidate is dissatisfied with election outcomes, there may emerge a potent incentive to seek judicial recourse to alter the vote count post-election. This trend, if left unchecked, portends a future where every election could be contested on similar grounds, casting a long shadow over the principle of fair representation in every democratic contest across the country. Of particular note is the disproportionate burden placed on military voters, overseas citizens, and those in transient circumstances such as students and personnel serving abroad. These voters have long depended on streamlined processes, including secure online portals designed by the federal government, to exercise their right to vote without undue delay or confusion. The recent ruling essentially undermines the information and assurances provided to them, thrusting them into a new and perplexing bureaucratic challenge. In some cases, even a submariner or service member on an active mission might find it nearly impossible to comply with the process dictated by the state's highest court. As the legal challenges press on, the strategy to safeguard every valid vote has taken on a dual-track approach. On one hand, Justice Riggs and her legal team are aggressively pursuing motion filings, including a motion for a preliminary injunction in federal court. This lawsuit is expected to escalate rapidly through the judicial system, potentially reaching the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals. On the other hand, there is a coordinated grassroots effort aimed at identifying and assisting voters affected by the cure process. Voters are being urged to check whether their names appear on what has become known as the Griffin List, or roster compiled by critics of the current process. The list, accessible via rigsforcourts.com, is intended to help family members, friends, and concerned citizens locate military students, expatriates, and other North Carolinians whose votes are at risk. Justice Riggs has called for an all-hands-on-deck mobilization, emphasizing that this issue is not isolated to North Carolina but is symptomatic of a broader threat to democratic governance. She warns that if such practices are allowed to become the norm, they will set a dangerous precedent for future elections, from California to Maine, where political operatives could pick and choose votes in select counties to sway outcomes. This selective targeting, which already began in North Carolina's most Democratic counties, illustrates how partisan strategies might exploit every loophole to rig an election in favor of predetermined interests. In her measured yet impassioned remarks, Justice Riggs stressed that every citizen's involvement is crucial. She urged viewers to follow her campaign and legal updates on her website and through her social media channels, where regular updates on the proceedings and calls for civic action will be posted. In addition to legal battles, the campaign invites donations to support the Legal Defense Fund, underscoring the enormous financial and data analytic effort required to track down and notify the affected 7,000 voters. The task, she acknowledged, is mammoth. It is akin to building the airplane as we fly it in real time. The gravity of the situation cannot be overstated. When decisions regarding vote validation are subject to retroactive scrutiny long after an election has concluded, the sanctity of the electoral process comes into serious question. The current challenge in North Carolina not only jeopardizes the outcome of a single race but also poses a threat to the credibility of every future election. The rules and procedures that govern our democratic process must remain inviolable. Altering them after the fact, based on political calculations, erodes the very foundation of representative democracy and calls into question the legitimacy of those who come to power as a result. In closing, the stakes are clear. This is a battle for the integrity of every vote cast, a fight to protect the rights of military families, overseas citizens, and every North Carolinian who believed that their voice would be heard on Election Day. Justice Riggs reiterated her commitment to ensuring that every eligible vote is counted and that the principles of our democratic system are upheld, regardless of the political cost. As legal proceedings advance and the final decision looms, this case will undoubtedly serve as a critical test of our nation's resolve to defend democracy against partisan manipulation. As we continue to follow this developing story, it is imperative that citizens remain informed, engaged, and proactive. The public's participation, whether through watching for updates on rigsforcourts.com, donating to the cause, or simply spreading the word, is essential in countering efforts that risk undermining the democratic process. In a climate where every vote is being targeted for potential invalidation, the defense of democratic values must be as vigorous as ever. Ultimately, the outcome in North Carolina is not merely a regional issue, it is a harbinger of how electoral disputes may be resolved in the future. If votes are discarded on politically motivated grounds, the very pillars of representative democracy will be at risk. The courage and commitment of leaders like Justice Riggs and the unwavering resolve of citizens across the state stand as a beacon of hope in these turbulent times. Our democracy depends on it, and the world is watching as North Carolina fights to ensure that the rule of law, fairness, and every voter's voice is preserved for generations to come.